Hey guys, thanks for joining me for another Dissidia Final Fantasy Opera Omnia video. Today we're going to do a character guide on Ultimecia. So she is one of the BT characters. She is the other BT character that is featured on the Luna Freya banners. So we're going to go ahead and talk about her in this video. We're going to look at her call first, then we'll look at her artifacts and spheres, and then we'll do a showcase and kind of show how she works. Basically, Ultimecia is a magic damage dealer who has the potential to delete turns with her BT. And she can do some cool things. She's personally not like my cup of tea. She's not my favorite character. She can be like, if you fully invest though, like a lot of these characters, like she's not bad. Like she can actually be pretty darn good. She likes to spam turns. She does really well. I feel like she's stronger in AoE fights than single target fights. So we'll kind of talk about that as we go through, but you can go ahead and judge her for yourself as you watch this video here. Her call, I really don't see myself ever really using. They're pretty basic, right? So her normal call here, Hell's Judgment, it's literally just an attack, like an AoE attack. And then all it does is it just does a debuff to the enemies called Sorceress. Sorceress's Hatred, and it's just a defense down in like a sap effect. So like the main reason you would use this is if you have well, I guess, I don't know, in Shinryu it's probably not that important. I was thinking for like Lufenia, if you had to take a Lufenia orb where you needed a sap effect, then you would use it, right? So maybe if you're still like struggling with Lufenias and you need that call, I mean, she's just got that on her base call, right? There could be a Shinryu where like maybe doing a sap like is really helpful to like something during their force time, something like that, but it's really not something you're ever going to use. Shockwave Pulsar, same thing. Doesn't really do anything too crazy. It just gives the party like an attack and or actually it's just the caller, I believe, gets an attack up and a brave regen up, right? The other thing, I guess, is the attack itself does do gravity. It gravities them down to 25% brave. So there could be use for that, but there are better gravity calls you could use out there. So really, Ultimecia's call is not something I ever really use. I wouldn't pull for her call, right? So let's go ahead. Let's go ahead and look at her artifacts and her spheres, right? So if we go down to her artifacts here, I think you've got actually quite a few options for her. So she is a damage dealer, so attack is probably her most important. But she does also have some brave gain that scales on iBrave, so iBrave can be as important as well. So I would say prioritize attack 108 first, but like you could do attack iBrave, you could do attack Max Brave. I think that's a good combo. Or you could do attack C50. I think those are all fairly viable. It's up to preference. The C50 does Max Brave and iBrave. So basically, you notice my theme here is the stats I'm doing is I'm pairing attack with either iBrave, Max Brave, or both. I feel like those are the best options for Ultimecia. So you kind of pick what your favorite combo is out of that. And then let's go into the spheres here. So the A slot, since she's a damage dealer, you have attack, brave damage, and actually like magic attack could be another option because she's a magic attack dealer. So I just know off the top of my head, Aerith has a pretty powerful magic attack sphere if you want to go that route. Otherwise, you could do attack, brave damage. Jack would be like an attack, brave damage all in one. There's tons that just do attack. There's a few that do just brave damage. Any of those are good. Now, because she does have a little bit of that brave gain, iBrave thing, like Luna Freya has, you could do maybe Machina. And so in my Luna Freya video, you know, I talked about how it was Enna Crow or Machina, right? And they both do attack and iBrave. And the reason my reasoning for prioritizing Enna Crow for Luna Freya is because Enna Crow triggers on weakness damage, but does the same thing as attack and iBrave. So I would prioritize that on her because Ultimecia now would be an example of a character that does not do weakness damage, but also wants attack and iBrave. So you could do Machina and Ultimecia, right? So that would be a recommendation there. Lightning is another one you could throw on her as well. Once again, Lightning will only trigger on a break, so you might not trigger it as often, but it is an option you could do, right? The E slot here, now, well, I'll just show you here. So my A slots, these aren't like optimized, but you just look at your spheres and do something. So I just have Vaughn, which is attack up when you have max HP. Very easy to trigger sphere, right? And then I've got Fang here, which is just raises attack when attacked. So I just have two very generic attack ups. Once again, there are better ones like the ones I explained earlier that you could put on her. That's just what I have because Ultimecia isn't like a max invest character for me personally. I don't want a full investor. So I could go crazier though with the spheres. The E slot, you actually probably don't want to use her own. Her own E-Slot is actually considered one of the worst spheres in the game. It just does a 30% defense down, And the reason why this is bad is defense down isn't like the craziest debuff. It definitely can be useful, but this takes up a debuff slot, and it's actually a pretty mediocre defense down. Like, other, like, true debuff characters do way better defense downs. So you really don't need this at all. Like, I think the best character to put a buff like this on would be somebody like Kadaj, who can actually, like, then turn it into a gold frame defense down. That can be actually kind of interesting. But on Ultimecia, you really don't. So the reason why I have it on her is because I've explained this in my other videos, but back when I was first maxing out EXs, I really didn't understand spheres. So I always just assumed the character's own sphere would probably be like the best one for them. So I just slapped it on her, right? So I don't want to remove this full sphere and lose it. So if I ever get a slot remover, I would maybe take this off and put something else there. So the question now is, well, what sphere do you want to put on Ultimecia? As an attack damage dealer, you want attack or magic attack spheres. So your primary candidates are going to be Seymour, Kefka, and Emperor. And I've talked about those before, but those are very good generic E-slot spheres you can put on those characters, right? So definitely if Seymour, Kefka, Emperor, Yuffie's another one. If those characters pop up, like, you definitely want to refine them a lot, right? Now, for utility, you could throw Ferris on there if you want to have, like, a little extra poison, but she already naturally does sap, so you probably don't need it. Or if there's a different debuff, like a speed down or something you want, you totally could try going for a speed down from, like, Tidus. But you, once again, don't have to do that. I think Fujin and Tidus have speed downs, right? So my recommendation, if you're an Ultimecia fan and you want her at her best, like, grab a Seymour, Kefka, or Emperor, something like that is what you want to throw on there. All right, so let's go ahead and hop into the showcase. So Ultimecia is a character that if you don't understand how... So she's a character that her kit has a little bit of complexity. Like, it's not as straightforward, like, not nearly as straightforward as Yang, right? But she's also a character, like, if a player, say, like, maxed her out and then just jumped in and pressed, like, the 15 or 35, they're going to be like, oh, this character sucks. And the reason why is you have to understand how the kit works. She has plus versions of the 15 and 35. Her kit is a little bit more intricate than just seeing, like, a big fat number. It's more about the combination of all the things she's doing, right? So let's get Luna Freya going here. Luna Freya, let's just pop the L... yeah, sure, we can pop the LD. That's fine. Actually, let's just do an energy heal first. And what I'll do is I'll pop the LD, and that's going to put the Heavy Prayer on Ultimecia. Ultimecia is the type of character that I think the Heavy Prayer could work good on. You could do Speed Prayer, like, too, with, like, some combos. Because, like, Ultimecia, you're going to find can spam her own turns. But you could, like, enable her to, like, if she's not set up for it, you could, like, do Quick Prayer on her. So, because basically Ultimecia's free turns scale on her EX. So every time she EXs, she gets it. So she is an interesting character to combo with an EX Charger, like Ashe or Lude. The other thing, though, is you could combo her with, like, a Quickness Prayer, spam attacks to charge the EX, and then go right into EX. So you could definitely get Speed Prayer boost off on her, right? So actually, let's try that. So we put Heavy Prayer with the LD, but let's go ahead and put Quick Prayer on her as well. Give her some extra turns here. Yeah, so you can see Ultimecia is just going to grab a few turns. So let's go ahead and do that. And then we'll go ahead and pop the 35 here with Luna Freya. So the big thing to watch out with Ultimecia is being aware of her EX, and her EX is definitely, like, it's one of her more important buttons to press. She's one of the few characters where I kind of like her EX more than her LD. Like, her EX does more, like, it's more a more important part of her kit than the LD, which is very rare. Like, most characters, the LD is, like, the prime thing, right? So I'm just going to show you, since I've got these free turns, I'm going to show you how bad the 15 and 35 work. So basically the thing to note is the 15 and 35, so that's the Protein Swords and the Hell's Judgment. You typically only want to use them if they're plussed. The way you get them plussed is she has a buff called okay, I gotta pronounce this right. Maleficium. Like Maleficent from Disney, but Eum at the end. So here, I'll show you the spelling. It's gotta be here, right? This thing. This buff here that starts with an M. That thing. It scales off of that. So it's a stacking buff, and it starts off at 3 stacks. It'll max out at 5 stacks. If that buff isn't max stacked, she doesn't get the plus versions, and they're very weak. Now, what happens is the 15 and 35 will do that. So normally, the way you want to start with Ultimecia is you want to do the EX. The EX gives her 2 free turns, and then you want to do 15 and 35. The reason why you want to do that is the 15 and 35, they're each going to give her 2 stacks of that M buff I was talking about, which is going to get it to max stacks, which then will lead into their plus versions. And then the 15 Protein Swords They both are going to like renew the buff. And then the Hell's Judgment is also going to do that Sorceress's Hatred debuff. And that's going to do the defense down in the sap, right? So I'll just use them here on the weaker version. So the Unplus version, like look at Protein Swords here. It's only going to be single target. So it's AoE Brave, but single target HP. So I mean, it still did 500k, which is decent. But what happens is if it's the plus version, it's going to add Splash. So you can see now it's got the plus version. So let's show you the plus version for comparison. So you'll see the same thing now. But it's going to splash. So there, we got an extra 155k on the other enemy, right? Now, Hell's Judgment, same thing. You definitely, like you can see Hell's Judgment is very low skill use. So you want to make sure that you're only using that on the plus version. And for the most part, you only want to use it off of the EX. And that's your primary button you're going to press on the EX. So let's do the EX first. So this is Apocalypse. Like I said, I think this is one of her more important buttons. This is where she Brave gains on iBrave, by the way. So that's where it's like really important to have the iBrave on there. So it's going to do a big AoE attack and do a lot of HP damage there, right? So then what happens is she gets a free turn and she's getting free skill uses. So this is now where you can spam the Hell's Judgment. Now the other thing is she gets a buff called Griever Magic from it. It does an attack max Brave up and it does a Brave Steel up on it as well. And then it's going to give her overhead. So you see her overhead has 2 turns. Basically, all that overhead is it's telling you that she's getting the free turns. That's all it is. It's the free instant turns. So that's just going to drain down as we use these free instant turns. So now let's go ahead and show off the plus version of Hell's Judgment. So this is like where she gets her power and why I like her in AoE fights. So you saw that 400k AoE, and mine's definitely not a full invest Ultimecia. Mine's actually very low invest, but it is full HP, right? So if you do that without the plus, it's doing very weak damage and you're wasting a very precious skill use of it. So typically what you want to do is you want to EX and you want to spam Hell's Judgment. If you're in single target, then Protein Swords is better. But if you're in multi-target, especially like 3-target fights, my favorite type of fights for Ultimecia are 3-target, because that 400k we just did would have been on all 3 targets because it's full AoE. So then you're really maximizing her damage. So I do like her in AoE fights. So sure, let's just do another Hell's Judgment. And it doesn't use the skill uses. So you might think that, oh, only 4 uses of Hell's Judgment, that's very bad. But because every time she gets the EX, and the EX is a move that never runs out, you just got to charge it. You literally have infinite skill uses with Ultimecia, provided you can just get that EX charged promptly, right? So that's the 15 and 35. Let's go ahead and actually, let's just hop into a burst phase. And then I can kind of just show off the rest of the kit without anything else interfering here, right? So let's go ahead and show off the LD. So this is Shockwave Pulsar. This does lower their Brave by 90%, so it's a big time gravity. It's going to do a big AoE attack, as you saw right there. It does restore a skill use of Skill 1 and Skill 2. So not only are you getting the free skill uses on the Hell's Judgment, but you actually can increase the skill uses as well. So she actually gets a lot of longevity when you consider the 4 uses of the LD, which so in turn means she actually has 8 uses of Hell's Judgment. And then not to mention every time you pop the EX, you're getting 2 more free skill uses of it. You're actually being able to use it quite a bit, right? Then this is going to refresh that M buff, that Maleficium buff. And it does give it 5 stacks immediately. So if you want to instantly get that to 5, you could start with it. But the way that she leads off with her EX, I would say just EX and then do 1535, and you've got everything up and you're good to go. That's basically the way that I would start her. And then from there, it's just managing your buffs and making sure you keep everything up, right? Now this also gives her another new buff called Sorceress's Intervention. And this actually gives her a lot. So the main reason to use the LD is for gravity and to get this new buff that I'm talking about. Because this big buff gives her attack up, overflow stolen, brave damage, HP damage up, and brave regen, which scales on iBrave, right? So that's, once again, I think iBrave is a little bit important on her. Attack is still more important, but iBrave, I think, definitely works great on her. So that's the LD. So then I've pretty much shown everything else. So I do want to show off, well, I already showed off the EX, so sure, let's do the EX again. So definitely on burst phase, you want to make sure if your 15 and 35 buttons are yellow, you want to make sure you press the EX, because now we get free skill uses of them. If I had pressed Hell's Judgment first, the skill would have gone to 0, and then when I get these free skill uses, it would still be at 0 and I can't use it. So you have to have at least an existing skill use to be able to get it green. So another piece of advice I'll give you, I don't think it's really going to happen in modern DFFOO, but this used to happen back in the day, was that you really had to manage your Hell's Judgment. So what I would do in a long fight is I would use Hell's Judgment down to 1, but then no matter what, I wouldn't touch it again, because that way every time I use the EX, I would still get another free skill use of it, and I would get it longer. But if you ever bring that down to 0, it's basically gone. Unless you increase the skill use with the LD, you can bring it back with the LD, and then get the green number again. But if a skill use is out, they won't give you the green number, right? So then what you'd want to do here, AoE fight, I just spam Hell's Judgment, right? We can do a protein sword so we can compare the damage. So that total is about 900k damage if you combine the damage from both enemies. Let's do a protein swords and compare the damage. Okay, so that was 476 and 150, so definitely less damage. That was more like 600, 650k. So that's why you see in AoE fights you want to use Hell's Judgment, right? Now, I didn't really talk, I guess. She has a transformed Brave attack called Maelstrom. You really won't ever have to do it. It does do like a mini gravity on it, and it does give her 2 stacks of that Maleficium buff. So if you need to stack it, but really you don't want to press it because it's not doing any HP dumps. So only if you're really desperate you would press that, but otherwise you don't really need to worry about that transformed attack right there. The only other time is if you're doing like Ursula, or not Ursula, Charlotta. If you need to do like, if Ultimecia pops up and you need a transformed HP attack, you could press it. But even then, you could just do HP attack double plus, and that's probably still going to be a little bit better, right? And then also her AA is really good. Her AA is just going to give her a lot more Brave regen, which is going to help her do more damage, right? So that's just a nice Brave regen up, which is very good. And let's do the BT. Now, I haven't even talked about the BT. Her BT is actually where she really shines. And so she's like Cloud of Darkness in that if you're going to go for her, I really recommend the green. Her and Cloud of Darkness, there's a lot of impact on their BT effects. So basically what the BT effect did right there, so it just did like a huge big attack like all the BT attacks do, right? But now she's got a burst effect. Now see, since mine isn't green, my burst effect only lasts 3 turns. So she's literally just going to like burn that out right here. The other thing I should mention though, is while she's got the free skill uses from her overhead, her buffs won't go down. So that's another thing to keep in mind as well. But basically what this burst effect is going to do, I just want to make sure if there's anything else I missed on the burst effect. Yeah, and it just does generic burst buffs, right? So we get Brave damage up, Brave limit up, HP damage up, HP damage limit up. But basically all of Ultimecia's attacks while her burst effect is up will delete enemy turns. So the reason why you want her green, number 1 is you get it for 6 turns instead of 3, which is way more impactful. Number 2, you can use the single burst attack without using the burst phase and just get it. And then what that gives you, it gives you the opportunity to either pick a better damage dealer to do the actual burst phase or like your force character. Or you could also use Ultimecia's burst phase and end up with 12 turns of turn deleting, which after 12 turns of AoE turn deleting, like the enemies are going to be wiped out of there if they're not jump cutting turns, right? So now at this point, I can just say pop the LD, and enemies' turns will get deleted. Now, these enemies might negate deletion, because I don't know that I saw that turn get deleted there. Or actually, that might have been single target, so it maybe only deleted the A turn. Let's do Apocalypse here on the B enemy. It should delete turns here, unless they're immune to it. There we go. So that deleted, yeah. So that first attack did delete the A enemy. It was just single target. So then we could do Hell's Judgment again. Okay. And then now we're just like deleting turns like crazy, right? Now the burst effect does still go down during the overhead, but her other buffs do not go down. So you can see that burst effect, bam, gone. Like that's it. I did my 3 turns. Now she no longer can ever delete turns again. So like the green is just so important on her because turn deleting is a very rare skill in this game. And I feel like if you like Ultimecia, it's because you really like that utility of having turn deletion. So I think her 2 biggest pros is that her EX is something that never runs out and gives her very spammable turns. And then also she can spam the turns and combo that with deleting turns, which can allow you to basically no-turn bosses, right? So there you go. That's pretty much Ultimecia. I don't think I missed anything here. So anyways, guys, let me know what you think. Hopefully this guide helps you all out. Thanks for watching. We'll catch y'all on the next one.